What's going on, everybody? It's Libb Thims here. Today we're going to step through a listing of the top 375 greatest atheists of all time. From a listing in 2018 I made, which I uploaded to ranker.com and got 200 people to vote on it 2,000 times, mostly from Reddit atheism and online votes. In this listing, people were told to upvote powerful non-believers and downvote less influential non-believers. The criterion here being, according to Ravi Zacharias, that there are two types of atheism, or atheists. One who are sort of playing at backyard stuff compared to the philosophical sophistication of greater atheists. And then there's front yard stuff atheists like Nietzsche. We're not going to cover all 375 atheists, but we'll skip through the interesting ones. First is Mohammed Hisham, who, if you were in the loop back in 2018, he got on Egyptian television and watch.
ملحد، يعني أنا مش بصدق في وجود ربنا ومش بصدق في دين، تمام؟
إيه تاني؟
أنا ملحد، فأنا مش بصدق في وجود ربنا أو بصدق في دين، بس ده الإلحاد. أنا مش محتاج الدين عشان أنا يبقى عندي أخلاق أو إن أنا أبقى نافع في المجتمع.
بقيت ليه ملحد؟
علشان مفيش أي دليل على وجود ربنا، أي دليل علمي، مفيش نشأة الكون
بقيت بني آدم.
ما ترد إزاي؟ أنت بقيت بني آدم إزاي؟ أنت موجود إزاي في الكون ده؟
تمام، طيب هقول لحضرتك في فرضيات بتحاول تفسر وجودنا، تمام؟ منها فرضية ان ربنا خلقنا، خلاص؟ في فرضيات بقى تانية عليها أدلة أكتر كتير، زي مثلا نشأة الكون اللي هو البيج بانج، تمام؟ اللي هو الانفجار العظيم.
بص يا محمد، اللي بيشاهدونا ناس، انت بتتكلم في مصر والمواطنين بسطاء بيسمعونا، كلمنا بالعربي، بلاش المصطلحات اللي مالهاش لازمه.
هو المصطلحات بس سببها ان العلم ده كله اتعمل بالانجليزي
انا بنصحك على الهوا ان حضرتك تطلع من هنا دلوقتي على مستشفى الامراض العقليه.
So in 2019, after he raised $12,000 from a GoFundMe, he escaped to Frankfurt, Germany. Bayan is pretty cool. He's a follower of Theodorus and Theophrastus. Hippo is labeled as an atheist by some Greeks. Norman Doloff, if you understand where humans come from in terms of entropy, you're going to want to read his book, The Heat, Death, and the Phoenix. Same with Harold Blum, Alfred Lotka. He's another guy in Egypt who made a video, God Does Not Exist, after he had threats put on his existence. He had to escape from Egypt. Muhammad El-Hadra. He gave a really nice speech. Let's take a look at that.
I'm Muhammad El-Hadra. One day, 4 years ago, I was becoming more and more Salafi, and I was believing in the caliphate and having that caliphate to be the greatest Arab nation or the Muslim nation back again. And then this man, Richard Dawkins, I found a YouTube video of him, and then I began to learn more. And then I woke up. To be able to wake someone up, that's what stands for being out loud and proud. Because if he wasn't, I wouldn't be here. And I'm sure that there's the same situation for a lot of people here. To be out loud and proud is to give a chance to people who are in the closet to come out. You give a chance to people to think, how do I know what I know? How do I know that the earth is round? How do I know about the theory of evolution? There's someone that says, okay, it's creationism. I need to find out. This debate and this reasoning with people, you can't have that while you're hiding. And I know that a lot of people here are open, but to be open in the Middle East is something else. In August 2016, Nahid Hattar, he's a journalist, he's an atheist, he published a cartoon about the god of ISIS. It showed that this is what jihadists look for in heaven. The whole country was calling for the government to get him. And they did. And after getting him, while he was going up to the stairs in the courthouse, he was shot to death on the 25th of September last year. This is the con. This is the major con for being out. Death is what we're fearing. But the problem is, and what's the saddest thing I have seen these 2 days, that Maryam said that the tsunami is coming in the opening of this conference. Yes, the tsunami is coming, but it's coming from us, from the ones who are on the front line. But here, you guys are losing. Yesterday at night, I had a small paper that says, "Awesome without Allah." And we left here, and we went to have dinner. An ex-Muslim girl with me at the conference grabbed me and took away that sign. And I asked her why. She said, because there are Muslims next to us, we might get in trouble. This is in London. This is in the 21st century. This is in the free world. Where are your priorities? While we die there, you're all thinking about Islamophobia. You're all thinking about not going.
So I would go and watch the rest of his video on YouTube at 3:65 if you want to know when the theist asks you, so where did life come from? You're going to watch or want to watch Alfred Rogers' Life Does Not Exist video on YouTube. Noah Lugeons, he's the guy who founded the Scathing Atheist podcast, very popular. Marcus Vero, Inspiration to Da Vinci, he says, it is good for the states that men should be deluded by religion. E.O. Wilson, founder of sociobiology. Kurt Bell, he's a walking philosopher. He famously said in his videos that his wife and his daughter are soulless bags of chemicals, which is technically correct. Sarah Hayter, she's a Pakistani-born American ex-Muslim who at the age of 13 was confronted by militant atheists, as she calls them, who started shoving passages from the Quran in her face. It says, "Look, this is what you believe," after which she became an atheist. Tracy Harris, we all know her from the Texas Atheist Call-In Talk Show. She's pretty cool. DJ Kirk, of course, he's the oldest atheist on YouTube.
The 9 most annoying things about atheists according to BuzzFeed's Jack Shepard and Dave Stopra. The Stopras have betrayed us. Today is a dark day indeed. They all think they are like this.
Next we have John Matter, the guy behind the cartoons of Dark Matter 2525.
God, I think there's a problem with some of your designs.
Jeffrey, the only problem is your lack of understanding. I'm God. My designs are perfect, okay?
Perfect nightmares, maybe.
What the hell are you talking about now?
Well, take this one. Sharp teeth, razor-like claws. This thing is made for killing, God. Why would you design something like this if death isn't going to exist?
Oh, I was just messing around, Jeffrey. That's not a final draft.
Cult of Dusty. Back in 2014, he was 8th ranked atheism channel according to views per sub ratios. Christopher Redford, he's the biggest deconversion YouTuber. He made a whole documentary with his channel Evidence on why I am no longer a Christian. If you're going through deconversion, this is a pretty surreal video. Michael Palmer, he published his Atheist Creed in 2010. If you're an atheist, you need to be able to list out at least 3 to 5 or 6 different things or statements about what you believe as your creed. William Provine, he's kind of a radical, aggressive atheist. John Patterson, he was a material science engineer, and he used to give his students creationist claims about thermodynamics as homework problems to figure out what was wrong with about the claims, which was pretty cool, I think. John Jackson, he's a pretty cool historian. He published a book, Christ Before Christianity, to explain that Christ goes back through the Egyptian mythologies. And there we are with Jacqueline Glenn. Let's look at one of her videos.
Hey guys, so I'm at Comic-Con right now, and there are tons of people everywhere, and there are all these religious protests going on all over the place, and it's hilarious. So I'm going to go try and talk to some of them and see how it goes. Well, this is going to be fun. Check these people out.
Repent. Hold on, Robert. Turn to Jesus.
Jesus Christ. Hi. Sorry. Would you say God is a loving God?
Yeah. He loves his people.
He is.
They just love the devil's people.
Oh.
You know why you need to be saved?
Tell me.
You're guilty before God. You've broken all his laws. The law of God is the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments is the law of God that we have all broken.
So, but if the Ten Commandments is like the best thing ever, why don't they mention anything about maybe not raping?
So not to commit adultery, not to commit fornication.
Yeah, that's not rape.
Not to commit sexual immoral acts.
That's not in the Ten Commandments.
Sexually immoral acts.
Where does it say thou shalt not commit sexually immoral acts?
Here is Sultan. If you're an ex-Muslim atheist, you're going to want to check him out. He's a pretty intelligent guy, very articulate. Robert Taylor is a huge name in religio mythology. He was in Oakham Gaol, which was prison. He said his motto was, bind it about thy neck, write it on the tablet of thy heart. Everything in Christianity is of Egyptian origin. Such a person as Jesus Christ, alleged to have been of Nazareth, never existed. Jacques Adre Nagion, he's one of the buddies of Baron de Holbach, who is the #1 atheist. Not on this ranking, but generally speaking. Lord Bolingbroke, he's a real intelligent guy. We're going to want to check him out. De Robinette Bennett, he started the American newspaper Truth Seeker, which kind of launched American atheism for about 20 or 30 years in the early 20th century, 19th century. Wang Chung, he's an Asian atheist. Discourses, weighted in the balance, 80 AD. He debunked a lot of Chinese folk religions. Interesting. James Froude is a huge dude. He was the last person to have his books burned in a public university. He wrote The Nemesis of Faith in 1849, and during a moral philosophy class, a student was found to be carrying a copy of this book, and the teacher snatched it up, threw it in the fire. P.G. Myers, two people don't like him for some reason. Everybody knows he launched his 2002 Farignulia blog, where he started attacking the anti-intelligent design group. Two people I like, Sean Carroll, he's pretty intelligent. He's kind of famous for denying the funding or from the John Templeton Foundation. He says he's not going to go to any conference where he's getting paid to support creationism. George Smith, he wrote the first popular book in America called Atheism, The Case Against God in 1974. It's a pretty good book. Victor Stenger, Science Flies You to the Moon, Religion Flies You into Buildings. George Foote, he's pretty famous in this, originating the concept of secularism. Daniel Scargill is hugely famous. Look at the one up here. He says there is a desirable glory in being reputed to be an atheist. He got kicked out of Cambridge and had to recant this whole thing in front of the public on some steps. Stéphane Charbonnier, he's the guy who launched the French newspaper Charlie Hebdo that got gunned down for making those draw Muhammad cartoons. Gets a lot of thumbs up from me and from 3 other people. Famous Polish atheist. People know about him. He wrote a book called The Non-Existence of God. David Silverman, President of American Atheists from 2010 to 2018.
How can you be a conservative and be an atheist? Please.
Ask him.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And now I need a Doug Blaze.
How can you be a conservative and be an atheist?
What a fantastic question.
It's a wonderful question. Now give me a fantastic answer.
Because conservatism and Christianity are not synonyms. Okay?
I'm talking about Christianity. I'm saying, how can you be a conservative and be an atheist? I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm talking
Because conservative and Christianity are not synonyms.
not Christianity. God. I'm talking about God. If you're an atheist, you don't believe in God.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And so I believe in small government. You've got to let me finish my sentence. If you're going to ask me a question, you must let me speak.
All right.
I believe in small government. I believe in a strong military. I believe in gun rights. I believe in everything that you want to do should be your right. I believe the government's job is to stand back and charge you as few taxes as possible and give you as much protection as you need to live your life as you see fit. That is conservatism. That's this guy's conservatism, Barry Goldwater. The whole concept that you need to be anti-abortion, anti-gay rights, anti-marriage equality, anti-death with dignity, that's not conservatism. That is theocracy masquerading as conservatism.
Well, not every conservative believes in all of that.
Of course.
But let me say this: we'll take your vote, and God bless you.
He's called a firebrand atheist. He made a lot of the billboards in America. He's got 4 thumbs up. Peter Joseph, he's the guy who started Zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist began as a public performance, an attempt at a vaudevillian concept. What I did was I set up 2 screens, and I had a huge percussion set up in the middle, where I performed with the videos that were on the 2 screens. I did it mainly because I had been stuck in the corporate reality, and I just wanted to do something for myself to make myself feel better about a world that's going to shit, essentially, a world that's being dominated by finance, a world that's sick and distorted through religious processes. Since the internet is what it is, tossed it up online to see what would happen. Maybe some people would like it, they download it, I get some feedback, whatever. What happened completely blew my mind. I posted it on one website, and from there a chain reaction occurred, and it's pretty much all history from that point on. I couldn't even tell you how it unfolded. All I know is that I got wind of the fact that it was getting a tremendous amount of hits and talked about a lot, so I built a website for it, zeitgeistmovie.com.
The effect of Zeitgeist was that it opened the eyes of millions of Christians to what's called mythological parallelism, meaning that the film showed that the former gods Dionysus, Mithra, the Egyptian Horus, Attis, and Krishna all had the same stories in parallel to that of Jesus, and that just as Horus would lead the dead to the afterlife, so too is the story rescripted into that of Jesus leading the dead to God the Father. Alright, so now we're starting to get into the top 300. Charles Southwell, Vladimir Nabokov, and William Du Bois. William Du Bois is unique in that he is one of the handful of greatest black geniuses known to have been an atheist-leaning mindset. He was the first African American to be granted a PhD at Harvard. He went over to Germany and became a free thinker, and came back and flatly denied joining churches, signing any creeds, or leading any church prayers. Moving forward, we have Joseph Lewis. Between 1930 and 1960 was one of the leading American atheist freethinkers, according to Smith. In 1960, he famously gave a radio address in Miami, Florida, called The Philosophy of Atheism. Phil Mason, number 300. He is interesting in that 2006 he launched his Thunderfoot YouTube channel, where he debated people such as Venom Fang X and made a 40-part video series, Why Do People Laugh at Creationists?
What's the reason for being at the recent rally?
Well, I think the main reason is to let people know that this is actually one secular nation. It's not under God, it's a secular nation. Right? And that secular thing means that everyone gets the right to practice whatever religion or to not practice whatever religion they want.
Now, let me ask you this. Is it impossible for God to exist?
The question is malformed.
Is it impossible? Is it an absolute impossibility for God to exist?
There is, when you say, is it impossible? It is a malformed question.
Is it impossible for God to exist?
You have a brain that finds patterns, right?
Well, we're going to get to that in a second, but what I'm asking is it possible or is it impossible for God to exist?
So this is a question about models of reality, yeah?
Does reality exist?
Seems to be a fairly persistent illusion.
Okay. So
Watson Heston is a famous American free-thinking illustrator who published the Old Testament, New Testament, and Bible comically illustrated. For example, Genesis 2.7, And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Pat Conlon was kind of popular back in 2007, stylized as an aggressive atheist. Theodorus, the atheist, was one of the first philosophers to be labeled with the name or subtitle atheist. He published a book called Of the Gods, Rejecting Belief in Gods. And he was classified with Diagoras as one of the first two outright atheists in history of humankind. Xenophanes was real famous for his statement that if horses could draw, God would have 4 limbs and run very fast. William Reed, in 1872, published his The Martyrdom of Man, which was subtitled as From Nebula to Nation, and it was considered an atheist Bible in the late 19th century. William Howard Taft is one of the only 4 U.S. presidents semi-classified as a potential atheist, including Jefferson, Lincoln, and Obama. He says, I do not believe in the divinity of Christ, and there are many other of the postulates of the Orthodox Creed to which I cannot subscribe. William Godwin was a writer and intellectual who says, in my 36th year I became an atheist. After reading Baron de Holbach's The System of Nature, he married Mary Wollstonecraft, and together they fathered their daughter Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein, who married Percy Shelley, one of the top 10 greatest atheists of all time. William Gaines, founder of Mad Magazine, he says, or told a reporter once that he was brought up in a home where they were taught to believe in Santa Claus but not God. William Oswald, he basically founded physical chemistry with his journal under the same name, but it was dismissed during the official obsequies of Johannes Weiss Licinius, who famously got Bible quotes removed from the periodic table, after which he toured Germany giving his famous monastic Sunday sermons, wherein he displaced God and monotheism with energy-based monism, stylized natural philosophy view of things. Walter Raleigh was said to be the head of a school of atheism, according to Jesuit priest Robert Pearson's 1592, whose students included Christopher Marlowe. Victoria Woodhull was one of the first female U.S. presidential candidates, and after reading Goethe's Elective Affinities, she said that a great revolution was soon coming. Tim Minchin is a famous singer-comedian known for skits such as Thank You God. Thomas Nagel is a semi-famous modern philosopher known for his article What It's Like to Be a Bat. Thomas Aikenhead was the last person in Britain to be executed in 1697. He was a medical student, hung at about the age of 19 for saying things such as the New Testament is a history of the impostor Christ who learned magic in Egypt and picked up a few ignorant blackish fisher fellows playing pranks on them with his supposed miracles.
Thomas Aikenhead, we discern and adjudge that you be taken to the Galilee and there to be hung on a gibbet till dead, and your body interred at the foot of said gallows.
Theophrastus, in his now lost essay on gods, supposedly debunked religion and proved God's non-existence. Thandie Newton, at the age of 5, was aware of the fact that she was black, she was atheist, at an all-white Catholic school run by nuns. She says she was an anomaly. She is the famous actress of the movie Columbania, about a girl who avenges her parents killed by drug lords. Thales is the father of modern Greek philosophy. He basically threw out all the Egyptian gods, but kept the principle of water as the basis of all things, out of which earth and fire as second principles arise. This gave birth to the four-element theory of chemistry. S.T. Joshi is a pretty good publisher of atheistic literature. You should read some of his books. Stendhal famously said God's only excuse is that he does not exist. And Nietzsche famously quoted this, saying that it was the best atheist joke ever, and he was jealous for not having thought of it first. Seneca, Stoic philosopher, statesman, dramaticist, said religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by the rulers as useful. Possibly a paraphrase of Lucretius. Richard Carlyle was famous for teaming up with Robert Taylor, who together with he rented a room above a print shop, which was dubbed at the time the Infidel Headquarters, from which they mailed out a circular to all the leading clergymen of Cambridge, declaring that they could prove that such a person as Jesus Christ, alleged to have been of Nazareth, never existed. They were locked up, and from prison he published 2 pirated editions of Percy Shelley's Queen Mab on his atheistic attack on religion. Protagoras is the first philosopher categorized as agnostic. He states, "Concerning the gods, I am unable to discover whether they exist or not, or what they are like in form, for there are many hindrances to knowledge, the obscurity of the subject, and the brevity of the human mind." Prodesus had a god theory that gods were invented by the ancients to equate the sun, rivers, and other beneficial things with. Polybus again says that since the masses of people are inconsistent, the ancients invented gods and the belief in punishment after death to keep the masses in check. Noam Chomsky, he is generally classified as an atheist, but he's an atheism label avoider.
If I mention to you the neuroscientist and liberal atheist author Sam Harris, who you've had an online debate with, he says he'd rather Republican candidate Ben Carson, who said a Muslim shouldn't be president and has compared Syrian refugees to dogs. He said that Harris has said he would rather Carson be president of the United States than you, because Carson apparently gets the threat from so-called jihadi terrorists that you don't. What's your response to Sam Harris, who claims to be a liberal?
I don't bother with Sam Harris. This is, he specializes in hysterical, slanderous charges against people he doesn't like. That's of no interest to me. Am I not concerned with jihadi terrorism? I'm much more concerned with it than he is. That's why I say you don't just scream at it. You look at the roots, you try to figure out how to deal with it, you respond to it. I don't take him seriously. I don't see any point in talking about him.
249, Pliny the Elder, according to Percy Shelley, says in his Natural History that the enlightened and benevolent Pliny thus publicly professes himself as an atheist. Pierre Gassendi, he was characterized as a secret atheist, and by way of his publications on the work of Epicurus, the life and death of Epicurus, the arrangement of the philosophy of Epicurus, reintroduced or revived atomic theory and thus launched the Renaissance and scientific revolution. Pierre Charon, who in 1601 published his On Wisdom, presented a system of moral philosophy that developed the ideas of Michael Montaigne, and his works were characterized as a seminary of atheism. He was also listed in Mercian's 1640 Catalogue of Atheists. Pierre Bailly was a huge encyclopedist, and he said, "In matters of religion it is very easy to deceive a man and very hard to undeceive him." And his publication on various thoughts on the occasion of the Comet 1682 was or has been characterized by Jennifer Haidt as the first ever all-out defense of the morals of an atheist. Omar Khayyam is characterized as an impious Epicurean poet. In 1856, his works were rediscovered by Edward Fitzgerald, who made 500 copies of them, which eventually went on to sell over 1 million copies in hundreds of editions. Machiavelli famously said in his Prince, "There is nothing more important than appearing to be religious." Morgan Friedman says, "I think we invented God." Michael Onfray, he's a French philosopher, and his best-selling book is Manifesto, The Case Against Christianity. Michael Montaigne, If you haven't bought yourself a copy of his collected works, read some of his essays, he is pretty much a staple of the Renaissance, and it's a quote-filled book where we have a gold mine of atheism inclining materialistic philosophy. For example, everyone's true worship is that which he found in use in the place where he was chanced to be born. Michael Shermer, he's the guy who launched the Skeptic magazine.
Proof or evidence of any sort can you muster to support your assertion that there is, for lack of a better term, God or some sort of intelligence at the heart of the universe?
Science tells us that nature is a discontinuity, that it's an on-off phenomenon, that there are gaps between every two ons, where you find a field of possibilities, a field of pure potentiality. Science doesn't call it God, but what is God if not the immeasurable potential of all that was, all that is, and all that will be? Science also tells us that this is a field of non-locality, where everything is correlated with everything else.
Did you hear anything in there that convinces you?
You asked Dan what I meant by woo-woo. That is the very embodiment of woo-woo. He said, stringing together at a rapid patter of a bunch of scientific-sounding words sprinkled in with some spiritual New Age words doesn't mean anything.
Next we have Michael Servetus, who after discovering pulmonary circulation of the blood was burned alive for doubting the Trinity. Mary Wollstonecraft, mother of Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein. She founded basically women's rights. A being cannot be termed rational or virtuous who obeys any authority but that of reason. And we must get entirely clear of all the notions drawn from the wild traditions of original sin, the eating of the apple, and other fables too tedious to enumerate, on which priests have erected their tremendous structures of imposition. Marquis de Sade, eponym of sadism, he was a back reaction to all the restraints people were putting on sexual practices in France. He said, "The idea of God is the sole wrong for which I cannot forgive mankind. Sex is as important as eating or drinking, and we ought not to allow one appetite to be satisfied with as little restraint or false modesty as the other." He wrote a book called Bedroom Philosophy, which is a pretty good read. Marie Curie, she's one of the only 4 people to have won 2 Nobel Prizes, 3 of which were early parental death geniuses. At the age of 11, after both her mother and her older sister had died from tuberculosis and typhus respectively, she fell into profound depression and concluded that God does not exist. Luther Burbank, right before his death, famously martyred himself as an infidel. And if you go online and type in atheist eulogies, you'll find he is one of the top 4 atheistic eulogies of history. Ludwig Büchner, he penned Matter and Motion, which is one of the earliest materialism textbooks. It was read by Einstein in 13. He famously said, "Where there are 3 students of nature, there are 2 atheists." Lucretius 2:21, his On the Nature of Things is the main conduit by which Epicurean atomic theory has been passed along to us. He says his aim was to dispel the fear of gods, which arises simply from the fact that there are so many things which men do not yet understand, and therefore imagine them to be affected by divine power.
The importance of this early Greek philosophy is revealed by the way in which it was preserved and still celebrated 400 years later by the Roman philosopher and poet Lucretius.
Long time men lay oppressed with slavish fear. Religion's tyranny did domineer. At length, the mighty one of Greece began to assert the liberty of man.
Lucilio Vanini published his dialogues on the mysteries of nature, and Schopenhauer famously said they found it easier to burn Vanini than to confute him. Linus Pauling, another one of the double Nobel Prize winners, also an early parental death genius, stated that he was an atheist but not a militant atheist like Paul Dirac. Leucippus is the father of atomic theory, from which modern atheism is rooted. Leo Tolstoy, famous for his War and Peace. He also is one of the first persons to coin the term freethinker cogently. He says, "Freethinkers are those who are willing to use their minds without prejudice and without fearing to understand things that clash with their own customs, privileges, and beliefs. This state of mind is not common, but it is essential for right thinking." Leon Shan, she's the first female atheist in recorded history. She was supposedly either the student or mistress of Epicurus. Julien Lemaitre was kind of one of the spearheads of French atheism. He published his Natural History on the Soul. He argued that man was a machine, and he attacked Cartesian dualism with mechanistic, materialistic atheism. His books are pretty good to read. They're not 100% correct, but he was a smart guy. Julia Sweeney, she is has a pretty good comedy skit called Letting Go of God.
On September 10th, the morning of my 7th birthday, I came downstairs to the kitchen where my mother was washing the dishes and my father was reading the paper. And I sort of presented myself to them in the doorway. And they said, "Hey, happy birthday." And I said, "I'm 7. And my father smiled and said, "Well, you know what that means, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, that I'm going to have a party and a cake and get a lot of presents?" And my dad said, "Well, yes. But more importantly, being 7 means that you've reached the age of reason. And you're now capable of committing any and all sins against God and man."
Joseph McCabe, he's got 4 upvotes. He was a Franciscan monk for 10 years, after which he became disgusted with his fellow monks and the Christian doctrine, and went on to publish 250 books. He also translated Ernst Haeckel's The Riddle of the Universe, some of Goethe's work, and he's quoted by Howard Lovecraft as saying, "There is no difference between the howl of a dog and a symphony of Beethoven." Joseph Campbell, famous mythologist. John Tyndall was a leading materialist atheist who launched or initiated the Tyndall-Stewart-Tate debate. And he famously said all religious theories, schemes, and systems which embrace notions of cosmogony or which otherwise reach into the domain of science must, insofar as they do this, submit to the control of science and relinquish all thought of controlling it. This was kind of the mark at which, or point at which, religion and science were separated once and for all. John Toland, he's the first person ever classified or called a freethinker. He says, "I believe all men will readily allow that none should speak with more freedom and assurance than he defends or illustrates truth." He was characterized by Jonathan Swift as the great oracle of the anti-Christians. Johann Fichte. If you want to understand the word or the origin of the term nihilism, you're going to want to look up the Forberg-Fichte atheism dispute, wherein Frederick Forberg published a development of the concept of religion in 1798, which argued that unbelievers could be moral if they acted as if an all-seeing and punishing God exists. And Fichte countered this and he developed his philosophical knowing of nothing. It's a little bit thick reading, but if you read through it, you'll understand what nihilism means.